Everyone in Seoul feared Kang Min-ho. 3 words could end a company. 1 look could empty a room. He had not trusted a woman in 8 years, not since betrayal taught him that softness gets you killed. Then Nia Abara walked into his hospital wing as a night nurse assigned to his injured brother, refused to bow to his threats, and looked him dead in the eye like his reputation meant nothing to her. Something ancient and dangerous woke up in his chest that night. If you have ever met someone who looked past the mask you built to survive, who saw the man underneath the danger, then you already know how this story is going to make you feel. Comment the word awake if you believe love can crack open even the coldest heart, and stay with me, because what happens between them will wreck you in the best way. Let's begin. Kang Min-ho did not visit hospitals. He sent men to visit hospitals. He sent flowers, cash, silence. But his younger brother Tae-young had taken 3 bullets meant for their father's old rival, and no amount of money could make Min-ho stay away from that particular room. He arrived at 11 at night, black coat still damp from rain, 2 guards trailing him like shadows with guns. The nurse on duty did not flinch when he walked in. She did not bow. She checked her watch, looked at him, and said, "Visiting hours ended 2 hours ago." Min-ho stopped in the doorway. Nobody spoke to him like that. Not doctors, not politicians, not the men who ran the ports he controlled. "I am his brother," he said, voice low and flat, the tone that usually ended arguments before they started. "I don't care if you're the president," she said, not looking up from the chart in her hands. "He needs rest, not visitors standing over him like a funeral is starting." Min-ho's jaw tightened. Behind him, one of his guards shifted forward, ready to intervene. Min-ho lifted 1 finger, and the guard stopped. He studied the woman instead. She was tall, dark-skinned, hair pulled back in a simple bun, scrubs slightly too big for her, exhaustion written across her face in the particular way that comes from caring for people who are not your own. She did not look afraid of him. That, more than anything, was the thing that kept him standing there. 5 minutes, she said finally, relenting only slightly. "And you lower your voice. If his heart rate spikes because you decided to be dramatic, I'm kicking you out myself." "You would try," Min-ho said. "I would succeed," she said, and finally looked up at him properly. Her eyes were steady, unbothered, the eyes of someone who had already decided his money and his reputation were not currency in her building. 5 minutes, Mr. Kang." She knew his name. Of course she knew his name. Everyone in Seoul knew his name. But she said it the way you would say any patient's relative's name, without weight, without fear. Min-ho walked past her into the room, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something other than control slipping through his fingers. Her name was Nia Abara. He learned that from the badge clipped to her scrubs before he left that night, and he told himself it meant nothing, that he was simply cataloguing information the way he catalogued everything. But 3 nights later, he found himself back at the hospital at the exact same hour, telling himself it was for Tae-young, knowing it was a lie the moment he saw her at the nurse's station. "You again," she said, not quite smiling, but something close to it living at the corner of her mouth. "My brother is still recovering," Min-ho said. "Your brother is recovering fine without you hovering at 11 p.m. like a very expensive ghost." She slid a clipboard across the counter without looking at him. "Sign in like everyone else this time." He signed in. Kang Min-ho, CEO of Kang Holdings, feared architect of half the underground economy that moved through Incheon's ports, signed a hospital visitor log like an ordinary man. Something about doing it made his chest feel strange, unfamiliar, like a muscle he had forgotten he owned. The next few weeks became a pattern neither of them named out loud. He came at 11. She was always on shift, because she had traded hours with another nurse for the extra pay, saving for something she never explained and he never asked about, though he wanted to. They talked in small, clipped exchanges at first. About Tae-young's recovery. About the weather. About nothing that mattered, and yet Min-ho found himself remembering every word she said days later, turning her sentences over like they were evidence in a case only his heart was building. One night, he brought coffee. Not sent someone to bring it. Brought it himself, 2 cups, because he did not know how she took hers and refused to ask his assistant to find out, wanting instead to learn it directly from her. "You drink coffee this late?" she asked, taking the cup anyway. I don't sleep much. Why not? He almost told her the truth. That sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant the sound of gunfire from 15 years ago, the night his father died in front of him and taught him that the world only respected fear. He said none of that. He said, work, and she let it go, the way she seemed to let a lot of things go, giving him room instead of pushing. If you have ever found comfort in someone who didn't demand your whole story before they gave you their patience, stay close, because this is where the real danger begins, and I promise you, it is worth every second. A month into this quiet ritual, Tae-young was discharged, healthy enough to go home, and Min-ho realized with something close to panic that he no longer had a reason to be at that hospital at 11 at night. He stood in the hallway on Tae-young's last evening there, feeling the strange ache of an ending he had not prepared for. Nia found him there, arms crossed, staring at nothing. He's being discharged tomorrow, she said. You should be happy. I am, Min-ho said, and it was not entirely a lie. She studied him for a long moment. You're going to miss coming here. The observation landed harder than he expected. He said nothing, which was, for a man like him, an admission in itself. I finish my contract here in 2 months, she said quietly. Then I move to a private clinic across the city. Better pay. Less chaos. Good, Min-ho said, though the word tasted wrong in his mouth. Good, she echoed, and there was something in her voice, something careful, like she was also pretending this did not matter as much as it did. 2 days later, Min-ho did something he had not done in 8 years. He asked someone to arrange a meeting on his behalf. Not a business meeting, a personal one. He had Park Sang-hoon, his head of security, find out where Nia's next assignment would be, and he arranged, through a series of donations that made 3 separate charities significantly wealthier, for the private clinic she was moving to be one that his company quietly funded. It was not manipulation, he told himself. It was proximity. There was a difference, though even he was not entirely convinced of that line. The following month, at the clinic's opening gala, Nia arrived in a simple green dress, uncomfortable in a room full of Seoul's wealthiest, and found Min-ho standing by the window, looking like he owned the building, because he did. You, she said, stunned. This is your clinic. I invested, he said carefully. It seemed practical. Practical, she repeated, disbelief flickering across her face. Min-ho, this is not practical. This is you following me across the city with a checkbook. He did not deny it. That, too, was new for him. This inability to construct a convincing lie in front of her. I wanted to see you again, he admitted. I did not know another way to make that happen without it seeming strange. It is strange, she said, though something in her posture softened. It's also the most honest thing you've ever said to me. They stood at that window together while the gala moved around them, and for the first time, Min-ho reached out and took her hand, just briefly, just enough to feel the warmth of her skin against his. She did not pull away. If 2 people finding each other across every obstacle their world throws at them makes your heart do something complicated, hit that subscribe button now, because the real storm is only beginning, and neither of them is ready for what comes next. Over the following weeks, something shifted between them, quiet and undeniable. Min-ho started arriving at the clinic not at 11, but earlier, in daylight, when people could see him, which for a man who had spent a decade avoiding visibility was its own kind of confession. He brought food she liked once he learned it, sat in the small break room while she ate, said little, but stayed. Nia, for her part, stopped pretending she did not look forward to it. She started saving him a seat. She started texting him small, ordinary things throughout her shifts, a photo of a particularly ugly hospital painting, a complaint about a rude patient, nothing that mattered and everything that mattered because it meant she was thinking of him in the spaces between. His world, however, did not stay quiet for long. Choi Dae-sung, a rival who had spent years trying to carve into Min-ho's territory, heard whispers about the woman Kang Min-ho had been seen with in public, an unprecedented development for a man who kept his personal life sealed like a vault. Whispers, in that world, were currency, and Dae-sung intended to spend them. Find out who she is, Dae-sung told his man over a quiet dinner in Gangnam. Find out what she means to him. A man like Kang doesn't show his face at galas for nothing. If she matters to him, She's the crack in his armor we've been waiting for. The following week, Nia noticed a black car parked outside her apartment building for 3 nights straight. She mentioned it to Min-ho almost as an afterthought, the way you mentioned something odd but not alarming. His reaction told her it was not nothing. Describe the car, he said, voice suddenly sharp, all the softness she had grown used to gone in an instant. Black sedan. Tinted windows. I didn't think much of it. You should have called me the first night. He was already reaching for his phone. From now on, you tell me immediately if you see anything unusual. Anything, Nia. I mean it. You're scaring me, she admitted. Good, he said, and then, softer, I need you scared enough to be careful. Not scared enough to run. That night, he had security placed outside her building without her full knowledge, men positioned in ways she would not notice unless she looked carefully, because he did not want to frighten her more than necessary, only to protect her completely. He told himself this was still just proximity, still just practical. He was lying to himself less convincingly every day. A week later, Min-ho invited her to dinner, an actual dinner, at his penthouse, the first time he had ever brought a woman there who was not family or staff. The apartment was exactly what she expected and nothing like it at the same time, cold and beautiful and completely without warmth, no photographs, no color, a place designed to be looked at rather than lived in. This place needs plants, she said, wandering through the living room. I've never wanted plants. You've never wanted anyone to see this place long enough to suggest plants, she corrected, and he found he could not argue with that either. Over dinner, prepared by his private chef but eaten in unusual quiet, without the entourage of guards that normally surrounded him, Nia asked the question she had been circling for weeks. Why me? You could have anyone, Min-ho. Rich, connected, someone who understands your world. Why a nurse who yelled at you in a hallway? He set down his glass slowly, considering the question the way he considered everything, carefully, from every angle. Because you yelled at me in a hallway, he said finally. Because you were the first person in 15 years who looked at me and saw a man instead of a threat or an opportunity. Everyone else calculates around me. You just told me to lower my voice. Nia's throat tightened. That's a low bar. It shouldn't be, he said. But it is. And you cleared it without trying, which makes it matter more, not less. She reached across the table and took his hand, the first time she had initiated the touch, and something in his chest, something that had been locked for 15 years, cracked open just slightly further. If watching someone learn to be loved for the first time in their adult life is something that moves you, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because what Daesung does next is going to test everything they've built, and you do not want to miss it. 3 weeks later, the threat that had been circling finally struck. Nia was leaving the clinic after a late shift when a man approached her in the parking garage. Polite, smiling. Dangerous in the specific way that men who work for Daesung learned to be dangerous. Miss Abara, he said. Mr. Kang has excellent taste. My employer wanted me to pass along a message. Tell Kang Min-ho that everything he loves is reachable. Even things he thinks is hidden well. Nia's hand shook as she called Min-ho the moment she reached her car, locked inside, engine running, refusing to move until he answered. Say it again, Min-ho said, voice gone entirely cold, the version of him she had only glimpsed in shadows before, the version the rest of Seoul feared. She repeated the message. Silence stretched on the line, long enough that she said his name twice before he responded. Do not go home tonight, he said. I'm sending a car. You're staying at my place until I understand exactly what we're dealing with. Min-ho, I have work tomorrow. You have work when I know you're safe, he said, and something in his tone left no space for argument. Nia, please. I'm asking you, not ordering you. Please let me do this. She went. That night, in his penthouse, wrapped in a blanket on his too elegant couch, she watched him make calls in rapid Korean, watched his face shift into something hard and controlled and utterly unfamiliar, and understood for the first time the true scope of the world he moved through. Who is Daesung? She asked when he finally sat beside her, exhaustion carved into his features. A rival. He's wanted my territory for years. He's never had leverage before. Min-ho's jaw tightened. Now he thinks he does. Because of me. Because I let someone matter to me for the first time in 15 years, and he noticed. He turned to face her fully. This isn't your fault, Nia. This is the cost of my world, and I never should have let it touch you. I should have kept you separate from all of this. You didn't force me into anything, she said quietly. I chose to stay. I'm choosing to stay now. Even knowing what it means. The danger, the surveillance, the fact that men like Daesung will use you against me if they can. Even knowing that, she said, and reached for his hand again. I didn't fall for the danger, Min-ho. I fell for the man who brought me coffee at 11 at night because he didn't know how else to see me again. Something broke loose in his chest at those words, something he had guarded fiercely for 15 years, and he pulled her into his arms, careful, like she was something precious he had never expected to be allowed to hold. They stayed like that for a long time, her head against his chest, his hand slowly stroking her hair, both of them aware that whatever came next would test everything they had only just begun to build. The following weeks became a careful, tense dance. Min-ho increased security around Nia to levels that would have felt suffocating from anyone else, but from him, she understood it as the only language of protection he knew how to speak. He walked her to work some mornings, personally, ignoring the whispers that followed him through the city now, a man once known only for fear suddenly visible, suddenly attached to someone. Daesung's people watched from a distance, gathering information, waiting. Min-ho's own network worked twice as hard to trace every movement, every whisper, every possible point of vulnerability. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which side would strike first. One evening, at a business dinner Min-ho could not avoid, a man named Jun Seo approached their table, smooth and charming in the specific way of men who had never been told no. He was a minor business associate of Daesung's, though he did not announce that connection outright. Miss Abara, Jun Seo said, sliding into the empty seat beside her while Min-ho was momentarily pulled into a conversation across the room. I've heard so much about you. It's rare to see Kang Min-ho attached to anyone. You must be extraordinary. I'm a nurse, Nia said simply. Not extraordinary. Just busy. Modest, Jun Seo said, leaning slightly closer than was comfortable. I like that. Tell me, has anyone explained to you exactly what kind of man you're involved with? The things he's done. The people who've disappeared because they crossed him. Nia's spine straightened. I know enough. Do you? His smile did not reach his eyes. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a woman who fell for a reputation without understanding the reality behind it. Excuse me, came Min-ho's voice, low and dangerous, suddenly beside them, having crossed the room faster than either of them noticed. I don't recall inviting you to sit here. Jun Seo rose smoothly, unbothered. Just making conversation, Kang. No harm intended. There's a great deal of harm intended, Min-ho said quietly, and you know it. Leave. Jun Seo left, though not before offering Nia one last unsettling smile. When he was gone, Min-ho sat beside her, jaw tight, hand finding hers under the table. I'm sorry, he said. I should have kept you away from tonight entirely. He was trying to scare me away from you. Did it work? She looked at him, really looked at him, at the tension in his shoulders, the worry he could not quite hide behind his usual control. No, she said. It made me understand how much you're protecting me from. And it made me want to stand beside you through it, not run from it. Something in his expression cracked open again, that same slow unraveling she had started to recognize as trust breaking through years of armor. If you believe real love shows up not despite the danger but in spite of it, comment the word stay right now, because Daesung is not finished, and what he does next will change everything. 2 weeks later, the storm finally broke. Nia was walking home from a rare evening off, security a careful distance behind her at Min-ho's insistence, when a van pulled up beside her on a quiet side street. Before she could react, before her security detail could close the gap, 2 men grabbed her, forcing her into the vehicle, and disappeared into the city's traffic within seconds. Min-ho's phone rang 4 minutes later. He was in a meeting, and the moment he saw his head of security's name on the screen, something in his gut told him the call would change everything. Talk, he said, already standing. She's gone, sir. Grabbed Onyo Nuidong. We lost visual for less than 30 seconds. That's all it took. The room around Min-ho seemed to tilt. For the first time in 15 years, Kang Min-ho felt something close to panic, raw and consuming, clawing up through his chest. Get me everything, he said, voice deadly calm despite the storm inside him. Traffic cameras, every associate of Daesung's, every property he owns. Now. His phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A text from an unknown number, a photograph attached. Nia, tied to a chair, eyes wide with fear but chin lifted, refusing to break even in captivity. The message beneath it was simple. Come alone, Kang. Or she disappears the way your father's enemies used to. Min-ho's hands were steady as he read it, though everything inside him screamed. He called Park Sang-hoon. Mobilize everyone. Quietly. I want this warehouse surrounded within the hour, but no one moves until I say. Do you understand me? No one. Sir, going alone is. I know what it is, Min-ho said. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm asking for your loyalty. The location Daesung specified was an abandoned shipping warehouse near the port Min-ho had controlled for a decade, a deliberate insult, using his own territory against him. Min-ho arrived alone, as instructed, though his people were already moving into position around the perimeter, invisible in the dark, waiting for his signal. Inside, Daesung stood beside Nia's chair, a gun resting casually in his hand, the picture of a man who believed he had already won. Kang Min-ho, Daesung said pleasantly. In 15 years, I never thought I'd see the day someone made you vulnerable enough to walk into a trap willingly. Let her go, Min-ho said, voice deathly calm. This is between us. It always has been. She has nothing to do with it. She has everything to do with it, Daesung said. She's the crack in your armor I've been searching for since your father died. You built yourself into a fortress, Kang. No weaknesses, no attachments, nothing anyone could use. And then you fell for a nurse who talks back to you. Beautiful, really, in a tragic sort of way. Nia, watching from the chair, met Min-ho's eyes. There was fear there, yes, but also something fierce, something that told him not to break, not to give this man the satisfaction of watching him unravel. What do you want? Min-ho asked. Your territory. Your ports. Your seat at the table. Sign it over, and she walks free. And if I refuse? Daesung's smile went cold. Then I show you exactly how far I'm willing to go to take what I want. What Daesung did not know was that Min-ho had spent the last 2 weeks anticipating exactly this scenario, preparing for it with the same relentless precision he applied to everything in his life. As Daesung raised the gun slightly, punctuating his threat, Min-ho gave the smallest possible signal, a flick of his fingers against his thigh, and the warehouse erupted into motion. His men breached from 3 entrances simultaneously. Gunfire cracked through the cavernous space. Min-ho moved instantly, throwing himself toward Nia, shielding her body with his own as chaos exploded around them. Ropes cut, chair overturned, Daesung's men falling back under the sudden onslaught they had not anticipated. Daesung, cornered, raised his gun toward Min-ho in a final desperate act. Nia screamed a warning. Min-ho turned, faster than thought, and the shot meant for his heart tore through his shoulder instead, a fraction of a second too slow to fully avoid it but fast enough to save his life. Min-ho. Nia's voice cracked as she caught him, both of them collapsing to the ground while Park Sang-hoon's men finally subdued Daesung completely. I'm fine, Min-ho gritted out through the pain, blood soaking through his shirt. I'm fine, Nia. Look at me. I'm fine. You're not fine, you idiot, you've been shot. Her hands pressed hard against the wound, tears streaming down her face even as her training kicked in, applying pressure with the steady competence of someone who had spent years saving strangers and now found herself desperately trying to save the man she loved. You came for me, she whispered. I would burn this entire city down for you, he said, voice weak but certain. I told you once that I don't say things I don't mean. I meant that too. They got him to the hospital, the same hospital where they had first found each other in a quiet hallway months before, and this time it was Nia standing over him through the night, refusing to leave his side, holding his hand as surgeons repaired the damage and his body fought to heal. If a love strong enough to survive gunfire and betrayal and every wall a broken man ever built moves you even slightly, hit that like button right now, because the ending of this story is going to give you everything you've been hoping for. Dae-sung, arrested and stripped of everything he had built, would spend the rest of his life paying for what he had done. His organization crumbled within weeks, absorbed or scattered, no longer a threat to anyone. Min-ho's recovery took a month during which Nia barely left his side, splitting her time between her shifts at the clinic and the quiet hours she spent beside his bed, watching him sleep, watching the tension slowly leave a body that had carried it for 15 years. "You don't have to keep coming here," Min-ho said one evening, half teasing, though the warmth in his eyes betrayed how much he wanted her exactly there. "I know," she said. "I'm choosing to." "You keep saying that. Choosing to." "Because it matters," she said softly. "Everything before this, the coffee, the gala, even the danger, none of it was really a choice for me. I fell for you before I understood what I was falling into. But this, staying now, after everything, watching you heal, wanting to build something real with you, that's a choice. And I'm making it every single day." Min-ho reached for her hand, weak but steady. "Marry me," he said, the words arriving without warning even to himself, unplanned, unrehearsed, simply true. Nia's breath caught. "Min-ho, you're recovering from a gunshot wound. You're not exactly thinking clearly." "I have never thought more clearly in my life," he said. "I spent 15 years building walls so high nothing could reach me, and you walk through every single one of them without even trying. I don't want a life without you in it, Nia. I want to wake up every morning knowing you chose to stay. Marry me." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and this time they were not born of fear. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you impossible, terrifying, wonderful man. Yes." They married 4 months later, once Min-ho had fully healed, in a small ceremony that included only the people who truly mattered, his brother Taeyang standing beside him healthy and grinning, Nia's mother flown in from Lagos, crying through the entire service. Park Sang-hoon standing at the back looking, for the first time anyone could remember, genuinely emotional. Min-ho wore a simple dark suit instead of his usual armor of expensive tailoring designed to intimidate. Nia wore ivory, a dress that made him forget, for 1 full minute, how to speak. When they exchanged vows, his voice, usually so controlled, cracked slightly on the words "I choose you," every day, for the rest of my life, and nobody in that small room missed the significance of a man once feared by an entire city being brought, willingly and completely, to his knees by love. "I promise to see you," Nia said in her vows, her voice steady even as tears gathered in her eyes. "Not the reputation, not the danger, not the walls you built to survive. Just you, Min-ho. The man who brought me coffee at 11 at night because he didn't know how else to stay close to me. I choose that man every single day, for as long as you'll have me." They kissed, and the room erupted into applause, and for the first time in 15 years, Kang Min-ho smiled so widely it looked like it might break something loose inside his chest that had been sealed since the night his father died. Over the following year, Min-ho did something no one in Seoul's underground economy believed possible. He began quietly restructuring his organization, pulling back from the more violent corners of his territory, funneling resources into legitimate business, into hospitals, into scholarships for young women pursuing nursing degrees. A quiet tribute to the woman who had walked into his life demanding he lower his voice and never once backed down since. It was not instant, and it was not without complications. Old associates questioned his loyalty. Some left. Some had to be handled with the same careful, ruthless efficiency he had always possessed, though now every decision was filtered through a single question he had never asked himself before: what would Nia think of this choice? It became, without either of them fully realizing it, the compass that guided the second half of his life. Nia, for her part, continued working, refusing to let marriage into wealth erase the parts of herself that mattered most to her. She eventually opened a small clinic of her own, funded quietly by Min-ho but run entirely under her direction, serving immigrant communities across Seoul who often struggled to access proper care, a bridge between the world she came from and the world she had married into. 2 years after their wedding, Nia discovered she was pregnant. She told him over dinner, nervous in a way she had not been since the night she first learned who he truly was, watching his face carefully for his reaction. Min-ho set down his chopsticks slowly, staring at her like she had just handed him the entire world. "Say that again," he said quietly. "I'm pregnant, Min-ho." He was out of his chair and around the table before she finished the sentence, kneeling beside her, both hands pressed gently against her stomach as though he could already feel the life growing there. "A child," he whispered. "Our child." "Are you scared?" she asked softly, watching the storm of emotion crossing his usually controlled features. "Terrified," he admitted. "I know what it is to lose a parent to this world. I know what it is to grow up in fear. I don't want that for them." He looked up at her, eyes glistening in a way she had only seen once before, on their wedding day. "But I also know what it is to be given a second chance at softness, at love, at being seen for who I really am instead of who I was forced to become. I want to give our child that chance from the very beginning. No walls. No fear. Just love." "Then that's exactly what we'll give them," Nia said, cupping his face in her hands. "Together." Their daughter was born on a quiet spring morning, healthy and loud, with her mother's warm brown eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Ariam, meaning beautiful, though Min-ho privately thought no name could fully capture what it felt like to hold his daughter for the first time, this tiny, impossible proof that love had truly conquered every wall he had ever built to survive. "She has your eyes," he murmured, staring down at the small, sleeping face in his arms, standing in a hospital room not unlike the one where he had first met the woman now watching him with tears of joy in her own eyes. "She has your stubbornness," Nia said, laughing softly through her exhaustion. "I could tell the moment she refused to come out on the doctor's schedule." Min-ho laughed, a real, full laugh, the kind that still felt slightly foreign in his chest even after everything, and looked between his wife and his daughter with a wonder he had never expected to feel in this lifetime. 15 years of walls, of fear, of believing softness was a weakness that got people killed, and here he was, undone completely by two of the people he loved most in the world. "Thank you," he said quietly to Nia, "for walking into that hallway and refusing to be afraid of me. For seeing something worth saving underneath everything I thought I had to be. Thank you for letting me," she whispered back. "For choosing, every single day, to be the man I saw that night instead of the one everyone else feared." Outside their window, Seoul continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to the small miracle happening within those hospital walls, the same city that had once feared Kang Min-ho now home to a man learning, one day at a time, what it meant to truly live rather than merely survive. And in that quiet room, surrounded by everything he had once believed he could never have, Kang Min-ho held his family close and finally understood that the most dangerous thing he had ever done was also the thing that saved him completely. He had let himself be loved. This story reminds us that even the most guarded hearts can be reached by patience, honesty, and the courage to stay when everything says to run. Real transformation is not loud or immediate. It happens in small moments, a cup of coffee at 11 at night, a hand held through fear, a choice made again and again to see someone fully rather than the reputation built around them. Love does not erase danger or trauma, but it gives us the strength to face both without losing ourselves. If this story moved you, if you found yourself hoping for Min-ho and Nia with every scene, let me know in the comments which moment hit you hardest, and subscribe for more stories about love that refuses to give up, even against impossible odds. Thank you for staying until the very end.